Hey everyone, what's up? It's BIOS Update, and I have a slightly different video today. I'm going to be teaching you how to play Dash in the Silver Age format. In today's video, I'm going to be covering Dash's deck list, her strengths, game plans, and tips and tricks. If you like this type of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. For a little bit of background, I have taken Dash to a top 32 finish at the Showdown in Minneapolis. I have won the People's Champion tournament at my local game store, which was a 6-month tournament that started out as Commoner and ended as Silver Age, playing solely Dash in that tournament. And most recently, I top 4'd my skirmish, taking her to a 5-2 finish with an over 70% win rate on the hero. All of these things have been done in a field full of Briars and Oldhymns, along with Fi, Dromai, Blaze, and many other popular heroes. I'm going to have the public deck list in the description, but I have a full sideboard guide available to patrons over on Patreon. You can get this deck list for as low as $3 for a one-time purchase, or you can support my channel for as low as $1 a month over on Patreon. I want to thank my wonderful patrons for supporting the channel and believing in what I do here on this channel. So overall, why play Dash? Obviously, Briar has her embodiments of lightning and embodiments of earth. Dash's hero ability seems relatively straightforward, but I think overall it has a huge impact in the Silver Age format. Dash's ability lets her start the game with a Mechanologist item in the arena that costs 2 or less. In every single game in Silver Age, this is going to be Hyperdriver. Hyperdriver enters the arena with 3 steam counters, and when you boost each turn, you can remove a steam counter once to gain a resource. This is essentially like turning our blues into a soul of existence, but without having to pay the life total. As you can imagine, this is incredibly strong, especially when we build a deck around the overall extra resource every single turn. In addition to the resource that she gains every turn thanks to the Hyperdriver, she also has an incredible defensive equipment suite in the form of Blade Beckoner pieces as well as her Embryo-based Cortex. This allows her to block a total of 8 damage over the course of the game while still threatening her opponent's life totals. On top of her physical equipment block, she also has a really good arcane barrier suite, and she doesn't mind blocking or pitching to prevent arcane damage in the form of Embryo-based Vizier, which also gives her the ability to prevent an additional point of arcane damage by removing a steam counter from the Hyperdriver we control. Overall, Dash has a good number of blues and yellows in the list, so she doesn't mind running anywhere between AB1 and AB3 against, whether you're playing against a Runeblade or a Wizard. On top of that, her overall card quality is slightly better than the average aggro deck. When you compare 0 to 60 to the other common 0 for 4 go again attacks, 0 to 60 has the least conditions that she has to jump through in order to give the attack go again. On top of that, it also blocks 3, which gives her slightly better rate and allows her to block a little bit better than the aggro decks, especially when you're getting to the mid and low life total portion of the game. I think this gives her an edge into the aggro mirrors, blocking a little bit while still sending difficult to block breakpoints in the late game. So overall, this is the deck list that I have been bringing to Silver Age. It's got 12 pieces of equipment that let us go in anywhere from, blocking defensive damage, blocking arcane damage, and then also utilizing Blossom of Spring and Punching Gloves in order to convert those extra resources for big combo turns. We're also running 2 different weapons. We're running Talishar, which gives us 4 damage for 2 resources, but breaks the 3rd time we use it. And then Plasma Barrel Shot, which is for the longer games where we're maybe risking a potential fatigue matchup, but it also lets us present these pretty big turns against these heroes that are going to force us to try to send these offensive overlaps. In the overall deck, we have 44 cards, so we're taking out 4 cards in any given matchup. Typically, these are going to be the Penetration Script, the Overblast, and the Payload. Those are really our sideboard pieces that we're bringing in for specific matchups. So this leaves us with 21 reds, 5 yellows, and 14 blues, including the Hyperdriver that we're going to start every game with. Overall, the cards that we're using in this deck are these above rate boost attacks in the form of, for instance, Throttle, Zipper Hit, and 0 to 60, but then we also have the Hyperdriver versions of those in the form of Jumpstart and Rev Up. We also have a bunch of 1 for 4s that just present really difficult to block breakpoints and play pretty well with our resource curve, allowing us to turn a blue into 4 damage, into 4 damage, into 4 damage, into 4 damage. As our blue base, we have the blue versions of our above rate boost attacks. We have our Hyperdriver extenders in the form of Big Bertha and Crankshaft. And we also have Teklo Trebuchet, which is a phenomenal card that's a 0 for 3 rate at blue, splitting up the breakpoints in between different cards. In the slower matchups, we have cards like Overblast and Payload that can allow us to go over the top of opponents' blocks on these really go wide turns, or closing out games when opponents stuck under 3 life and we are able to present a payload for 6 dominate damage. So I'm planning on talking about this graph a little bit more in a future video, but if we imagine the game being played on two axes, the accelerating versus decelerating axis, so does your hero prefer to accelerate the game or decelerate the game? And then for tempo versus inevitability, does your hero want to play towards the tempo? Do they want to play on the hand-to-hand value axis, or do they want to play towards overall game inevitability, saying if you don't defeat me by this turn, I'm going to have so much overall value that I'm either going to be able to fatigue you, or am I going to be able to present this offensive overlap that you won't be able to block and therefore are going to leak some damage. So I think overall, it's pretty clear that Dash with the boost mechanic plays more towards the accelerating side of things. She has very good access to Go Again in the form of her boost attacks, and then she's also able to present these offensive overlaps with cards like Plasma Barrel Shot and Penetration Script that allow her to really present more damage than her opponents can easily block. In the next segment of the video, I'm going to be talking about 4 different game plans that I utilize in the same Dash deck list in order to target different kinds of matchups. These are game plans and strategies that I've come up with by tracking my games over time in my Codex journal and figuring out ways in order to beat certain heroes. If you want to get your own Codex journal, you can get 10% off by visiting codexjournals.com/BIOS and using code BIOS for 10% off. I want to thank Codex Journals for supporting the channel, and back to the video. Like I mentioned, Dash really excels when she's able to accelerate the game. This is especially true in the aggro matchups. As we mentioned, she has really good above rate boost attacks like Throttle, Zipper Hit, and 0 to 60, and on her average hand with the Hyperdriver resource and pitching a blue, she can often get more than 16 value in a single turn offensively. This allows her to play in the extreme corner of both accelerating and tempo game plan. However, she's not really just limited to that. She can play a more mid-range value plan. Because all of her cards block for 3, she doesn't really mind as much when she has to take an off turn and block a couple cards from hand, maybe set up an arsenal. The minimum value she's going to get in a single turn from her hand is going to be 12. However, she doesn't have to commit to full blocks. Because her cards block for 3, she can sometimes commit just 2 cards to block and then send a Throttle into a Talishar, still getting 10 points of offensive value in addition to the 6 points of defensive value. So in addition to just accelerating the game, she can play more of that mid-range value plan while still holding on to the tempo of the game. While Dash really excels in the tempo-oriented side of things, she's not just limited to the tempo side. She has ways to create this inevitability or these offensive overlaps with cards like Plasma Barrel Shot allow her to create these offensive overlaps when she sends 3 or 4 boost attacks into a Plasma Barrel Shot for 4 or 5. When you have similar cards like Overblast that start with a base power of 5, you can really start to see how she can start to overwhelm opponents with more damage than they can actually block in a single turn. In addition, and I guess probably really supporting the combo aspect, is the Hyperdriver. As we've mentioned, she has these synergistic cards that allow her to get more value, with Jumpstart becoming an above rate boost attack costing only 1. In addition to Jumpstart, she also has cards like Big Bertha, which can extend the shelf life of her Hyperdriver by putting counters back on it when they've been boosted. All in all, this allows her to really play towards offensive overlaps and really compress her damage in matchups where she might need to deal damage in the fewest turns possible. A couple heroes that really come to mind with this game plan are heroes like Riptide and Florian. In the case of Riptide, you really want to compress your damage so that you're minimizing the value of the traps. You're not taking as many pings from Riptide. And in Florian, you really want to reduce the amount Florian is able to decompose by loading Plasma Barrel Shot, arsenaling and passing, and then sending a big 5-card turn. You're able to minimize the chances that Florian is able to get online, get his hero ability, and start stacking up those rune chants. So overall, Dash can play on this offensive overlap game plan that gives her the inevitability even against really defensive heroes that would otherwise have the inevitability into you like Riptide and Florian. I will say, however, that fatigue matchups tend to be the most difficult for Dash, particularly Oldhim. Thankfully, Dash has a really interesting way to combat fatigue, which we'll talk about in just a second. So while Dash does have these combo turns that allow her to compress her damage, she also has the ability to set up damage in a way that really helps her get over these fatigue decks, even when they want to block with their full hand each turn. First of all, we have Plasma Barrel Shot, which is a fantastic tool for both cycling cards in hand and playing more towards that combo setup game plan. Because fatigue decks play on the axis of trying to make every card worth the most value possible, boosting is just a losing game plan into that strategy. Instead, what we want to do is we want to force the fatigue deck to become the beatdown. Plasma Barrel Shot is one tool that helps us, and we can basically block with as many cards as we need, load Plasma Barrel Shot if it isn't already, and send big unboosted attacks like Throttle, sending 6 damage while still blocking out and waiting until we get to our overall setup and payoff turns. Our goal is to keep our deck density as high as possible while waiting for the payoff, which is going to come in the form of 2 penetration scripts. We're going to bring Achilles Accelerator into this as it's crucial to the plan. Once we see our first penetration script, we're going to want to arsenal that. When we see our second one, what we'll do is we'll send a boost attack, play the first penetration script uncranked, we'll break Achilles Accelerator in order to refresh our action point, and play the second one uncranked as well. The goal is to play out both penetration scripts and still have a card that we can arsenal for a 5-card turn. Once we have the 2 penetration scripts out, they're going to add a total of 2 power to every single Mechanologist attack action card for the following turn. If we do that successfully, we can rely on the Blossom of Spring and Hyperdriver in order to give us a total of 2 resources, which can help us send our entire hand, hopefully pitchless. I'm going to show you an example turn here, where we break Blossom of Spring and relying on the Hyperdriver resource, we can play a Jumpstart, which comes in for 7 instead of 5, thanks to the 2 penetration scripts, getting that resource from the Hyperdriver. We can play 0 to 60, boosting that for a total of 6 power, Zipper Hit for another 7, Teklo Trebuchet for 3, into a T-Bone, for instance, which is not going to be just 3 or 5, but 7, thanks to both the penetration script and the Teklo Trebuchet 2000 buffs, into our Plasma Barrel Shot for a total of 6 extra damage. The setup turn gave us an overall value of 36 offensive value. Granted, it is a 5-card hand with a pretty significant setup, but this is a way that we can try to get over the fatigue decks. And even if the fatigue deck is able to survive that 36 damage turn, we still have the inevitability with cards like Payload that can help us dominate to close out the game. And because we haven't been boosting, we still have any cards that we've pitched and any cards that are remaining in deck in order to help us try to close out the game. We might pivot from that overall setup combo turn into the more, setup turn, offensive overlap turn to help close out the game. While this game plan isn't a guaranteed victory into Oldhim, it does improve our odds significantly, especially against these decks that have a significant number of block 4s and really prefer to block rather than convert their hand to offense. I mentioned this earlier, but if you want the more detailed version of my matchup information against all the heroes currently legal in Silver Age, I have the full sideboard guide available over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That's all I have today, though. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll teach you in the next one.